Hello friends, Edward here. I have another video for you, and I'm going to go over some stuff here in this long continuing journey that I've been on for over 10 years, 12 years now, obsessing about the process of remote viewing and how remote viewing might potentially work. And it's all documented here. If you go back through my YouTube videos, all the way back to 2012, 2013, where the process became my biggest obsession, way more important than any quote-unquote or so-called target could ever be. That the process itself, what was taking place inside of the brain or inside of the nervous system of a remote viewer when an actual remote viewing is taking place, that became my biggest obsession. Right around this time here in the spring of 2016, while doing a lot of experimental work using remote viewing itself as the mechanism to study my own brain and my own nervous system in an attempt to try to understand where in my brain or my brain stem or my nervous system I could sense that a stimulus was affecting that specific part of my brain. And I used remote viewing to do that. And how I did that was under blind conditions, a random target, do the session here on my whiteboard, and when I felt the qualities of an actual remote viewing was taking place, then I would turn my attention towards what was happening inside of my own brain, and attempting to pinpoint the areas where I felt the stimulation or the stimulus in my brain. Back here around April of 2016, I began to contemplate the idea that the input, meaning the state of the input meaning the quote unquote target, or as I began to theorize it as a range of time and space, not a target. It's a range of time and space, and that it exists in some state. And right around this time, I began to theorize that the state was potentially some type of state of radiation, because I felt that it had, when the range of time and space was acquired in the specific part of my brain, that it was probably affecting those neurons at a speed of light or something along those lines, and that it is most likely exists in a state of some type of radiation, and as it flashes through instantaneously, what we're left with is what I theorize as some type of input residue, meaning that our access of this range of time and space was automatic, autonomic, and instantaneous. And then I began to theorize that there must be in the brain what I called a selector mechanism and what I called a attractor mechanism, meaning some part of our brain that can select ranges of time and space, and then an attractor mechanism which would pull it into other parts of the brain to begin the process of memory association, memory comparators, and higher levels of comprehension of what is taking place in that range of time and space. So I theorized that the range of time and space, the state of the input, the state of that range in time and space might potentially be a state of gravitational radiation, a gravitational wave. I had no idea why I felt that way other than intuitively, as I don't read books about it. I don't study other people's videos. In these videos, all these years back, I would get people saying, you need to read so-and-so's book, you need to check out so-and-so's video, and I wouldn't read any of them because I didn't want to be affected by anyone else's hypothesis. I needed to find it myself. I needed to experience it myself. It wasn't going to be a form of repeating someone else's theories. I had to go and experience it myself and describe my experience of it. That's the only way to do it for me. Experientially, experimentally, and not just repeating someone else's theories. So in doing so, I began to have my own personal theories of what might possibly be happening when an actual remote viewing is taking place, how remote viewing might actually work. Recently, well, as far as the areas of the brain that I felt the stimulation in, were deep brain stem area. The oldest parts of the brain I felt were the areas where I felt the stimulation of the input, like the medulla oblongata, the oldest parts of the brain. That's where I felt the stimulus. And that's where I began to theorize that our ability to access these ranges of time and space, to select these ranges of time and space, were most likely an automatic, autonomic response, like what happens with the medulla oblongata. Automatic, autonomic. Then, I think my obsession with then the attractor mechanism, I had to turn my attention, okay, what about the attractor mechanism that I theorize? Where is that? Where is that? And during the remote sessions and sessions and sessions, I felt it in a specific part of my brain that I felt it was taking place. Here, dentate gyrus area, in the hippocampal formation, as well as the CA3 region, which connects to the dentate gyrus, which has processes that are called pattern completion and pattern separation, meaning when an input enters into these pyramidal neurons, the CA3 region will associate them with existing memories. That's how I've realized that the supposed or so-called AOL or analytical overlay was really the CA3 region of the hippocampal formation, along with the dentate gyrus. It was taking the input into these regions, was being attracted. This, and again, it is, let me find it here. This is what I found, and I almost fell off my chair when I found it. The CA3 region, a signature of attractor dynamics. I found this long after I theorized that there must be an attractor mechanism in the brain that pulls the input in and begins the processing. And that's exactly what I found. The CA3 region has an attractor mechanism. I found this after I found this part of my brain, and I went and I looked up this part of my brain. That's how I found it. I found all of this through remote viewing itself, not from reading other people's stuff. There's the attractor. They call it attractor dynamics. I called it attractor mechanism. Pulls it in and begins the process of remote viewing. The state of the input that I theorize is a state of gravitational radiation, a gravitational wave, all the way back here in April of 2016. I didn't know how to find any truth to that, or how could I prove that. It was just something that I had to theorize, keep it in the back of my mind, and hopefully something would show up. Recently, one of my Patreon subscribers, Greg Womble, who is in the field of neurology, he has suggested to me some things recently that could prove my theories. And I also recently saw a video from another fellow talking about these guys here, Penrose and Hameroff, and their theory, which gave me another major clue to my theorized state of the input, the range of time and space existing in a state of gravitational radiation. What these guys theorize is that inside of the brain, in the pyramidal neuron, which is the pyramidal neuron I've been obsessed with since I began to obsess about the CA3 region and the dentate gyrus and the pyramidal neurons that are specific in these regions. What they theorize is that inside, and I was wondering, what is inside of the pyramidal neurons? What is inside of there? They found out. Inside of here are what are called microtubules. These are little protein tubes here. They theorize that inside of these microtubules is a quantum state. A quantum state. And that's what gives us consciousness. We're conscious because of a quantum state within the pyramidal neuron, the microtubules within our pyramidal neurons. This guy, Stuart Hameroff, is a scientist, University of Arizona. He's also an anesthesiologist. He theorized that that could possibly be true, because when you introduce an anesthesia to the brain, to these microtubules, like xenon, which is interesting because I remote viewed xenon, that they basically block off the access to these microtubules, therefore turning off consciousness. The other theory that they have here, collapsing a leading theory for the quantum origin of consciousness, is that gravity interacting with the quantum state within the microtubule, gravity collapses the quantum state and we experience consciousness. I just found this out. When I read that, or when I heard the guy talking about it on the video, I immediately felt that it had began to prove my theory that that the state of the input exists within a gravitational wave, and that how remote viewing is possible is within that quantum state that exists within our microtubules, that exists within our pyramidal neurons. The gravitational wave holds the ranges of time and space, and that gravitational wave collapses the quantum state within the microtubule, and therefore we experience a selected range of time and space. Gravitational waves are what they theorize, as is here. Gravitational waves are changes in the gravitational field that propagate through space. They are generated by the motion of masses and radiate from their source at the speed of light. That translates to me as actions. Actions. Actions moving through time and space. Actions moving through time and space that exists within a gravitational wave, meaning history. History recorded within a gravitational wave, gravitational radiation, that somehow, for some reason, in our brain, and I theorize medulla oblongata, a selective mechanism that can select that range of time and space that exists within a gravitational wave that collapses the quantum state within a microtubule, and now that range of time and space begins the process of being decoded through areas like this, the CA3 region, that has attractor dynamics, to take pieces of that input and begin to associate them with memories so that we can understand it and comprehend it and give it language. Here's an example of it. This is a range of time and space here, a quote-unquote target. I'm blind to it. I have no idea what it is. I'm going through my process here, what I call the Reardon method. I want these things from the neuroscience. I want proprioception. I want my ideograph to produce proprioceptive information that is going to provide me a dimensional sensation of that range of time and space. Proprioception is an experience that we experience in the what are called the cerebral peduncles of our brain. They provide us with information of our orientation in time, well, in space, our orientation in space. As I'm going through this, and I'm producing it, there's a ridge there. It's like a mountain cliff. Getting pattern completes here. Pattern completes that are taking place through the CA3 region of my brain. Pattern completion. Pattern separation, again, happening here in the CA3 region of my brain, which don't complete into a memory. They keep it open, so I continue with cognition. And there's some kind of a mountain range here. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal to me. Oh, look at that. That was the quote-unquote target. No, he got it. Isn't he great? It doesn't matter. It doesn't make any difference to me. The only thing that matters is that my theory that I've been working on for all these years, the state of the input, how we interact with it, and how we can do it, might possibly be being proven now in 2025. Theory, it's my theory, it's ongoing, and I hope you find it interesting. I find it fascinating. This is my work, my life's work, and hopefully my contribution to the human race. Many more to come.